The 25th of August, 1905, Volume 6. True virtues must have their roots in the heart of Jesus and be developed in the heart of the creature. This morning on coming, blessed Jesus told me, "My daughter, the soul must reside in my heart, and her very virtues, she must make it in such a way that they have their roots in my heart and be developed in her heart. Otherwise, there might be the natural virtues or those of sympathy, which are called virtues at times and circumstances and are mutable, while the virtues whose roots are fixed in my heart and are developed in the soul are stable and adapt themselves to all times and to all circumstances and are the same for all. But the others are not, and it happens that they feel an unlimited charity for someone. That is, at one time they are all fire, they make true sacrifices, they would want to lay down their lives, but then someone else comes, perhaps more in need than the first one, and in one moment the scene changes. They become icy. They do not even want to make the sacrifice of listening or saying a word. They are listless and send him back embittered and irritated. Is this perhaps the charity whose root is fixed in my heart? Certainly not. On the contrary, it is a vicious charity, all human and of sympathy, which seems to flourish at one moment and it withers and disappears at another. Someone else is obedient to someone, submitted, humble. He makes himself a rag in such a way that the other can do with him what he wants. But with another, he is disobedient, recalcitrant, proud. Is this the obedience that comes from my heart? As I obeyed everyone, even my very executioners? Certainly not. Someone else is patient on certain occasions, be they even serious sufferings. He looks like a lamb that does not even open its mouth to lament. But with another, suffering may be smaller, he loses his temper, he gets irritated, he swears. Is this perhaps the patience whose root is fixed in my heart? Certainly not. Someone else one day is all fervent. He prays always to the point of transgressing the duties of his state. But on another, he has had an encounter a little disappointing, he feels cold, and he abandons prayer completely to the point of transgressing the duties of a Christian, the prayers of obligation. Is this perhaps my spirit of prayer as I reach the point of sweating blood, of feeling the agony of death, and yet I never neglected prayer for one single moment? Certainly not. And so with all the other virtues, only the virtues which are rooted in my heart and grafted in the soul are stable and lasting and shine as full of light. The others, while they appear to be virtues, are vices. They appear to be light, but they are darkness. Having said this, he disappeared, and as I continued to desire him, he came back and added, "The soul who desires me always impregnates herself with me continuously, and I, feeling myself impregnated by the soul, impregnate myself with the soul in such a way that wherever I turn, I find her with her desires and I touch her continuously." End of the reading.
The 25th of August, 1906, Volume 7. Self-Interest and Human Sciences in Priests. This morning, finding myself outside of myself, I seemed to see priests and prelates intent on their interests and on human sciences which are not necessary for their state, with the addition of a spirit of rebellion against the authorities superior to them. All afflicted, our Lord told me, "My daughter, interest, human sciences, and everything that does not pertain to the priest forms a second nature for him, muddy and rotten, and the works that come from him, even holy, are so stinking and I feel such nausea that they are unbearable to me. Pray and repair for these offences, for I can take no more. End of the reading.
The 25th of August, 1921, Volume 13. The more knowledge one has about the divine will, the more value his acts acquire. I was fusing all of myself in the holy divine volition, and my Jesus told me, "Daughter of my will, the more you immerse yourself in my volition, the more the circle of your will is enlarged within mine. It is yet true that the acts done in my will fill everything, just as the light of the sun fills the earth. However, by repeating the acts in my will, the circumference of the sun itself becomes larger, and the soul acquires greater intensity of light and heat. As she repeats her acts in my will, her will remains tied to mine as many times, and these knots make many divine rivulets flow over the whole earth, preventing the free course of justice. And I, yet, O my Jesus, many scourges fill the earth, such as to be horrifying. Ah, my daughter, yet one can say that this is still nothing. And if it wasn't for these rivulets, for these knots of the human will made in the divine will, I would look at the earth as if it did not belong to me any more, and therefore I would make chasms open everywhere to swallow it. Oh, how the earth weighs upon me." But he was saying this with such bitterness as to make stones cry. Then he added, "Every time I speak to you about my will and you acquire new understanding and knowledge, your act in my will receives more value and you acquire more immense riches. It happens as to a man who possesses a gem and knows that this gem is worth a penny. He is rich 1 penny. Now it happens that he shows his gem to a skilled expert who tells him that his gem has a value of 5,000 liras. That man no longer possesses 1 penny, but he is rich 5,000 liras. Now, after some time, he has the opportunity to show his gem to another expert, even more experienced, who assures him that his gem contains the value of 100,000 liras and is ready to buy it if he wants to sell. Now, that man is rich 100,000 liras. According to his knowledge of the value of his gem, he becomes richer and feels greater love and appreciation for the gem. He keeps it in custody more jealously, knowing that the gem is all his fortune, while before he held it as a trifle. Yet the gem has not changed. That which it was, so it is now. He is the one who has changed by understanding the value that the gem contains. Now, the same happens with my will, as well as with virtues. According to how the soul understands their value and acquires knowledge of them, she comes to acquire new values and new riches in her acts. Therefore, the more you know my will, the more your act will acquire value. Oh, if you knew what seas of grace I open between you and me every time I speak to you about the effects of my will, you would die of joy and would make feast as if you had acquired new reigns to dominate. End of the reading.
The 25th of August, 1926, Volume 19. The divine will makes of the whole life of our Lord one single act in his interior. I was remembering all the acts of our Lord so as to unite myself with him. And not only this, but to find his most holy will operating in all of his acts, to be able to identify with it and make one single act with mine. So I would have wanted to be conceived with Jesus, be born with Jesus, moan, cry, suffer, pray, shed my blood together with his, and die together with Jesus. Now, while I was thinking of this, he moved in my interior, making his presence felt in my heart, and raising his arm in the act of clasping me to himself told me, "My daughter, my whole life was one single act, coming from that single act of the Eternal One, which has no succession of acts. And if in my humanity, externally, one could see the gradual succession of my acts, that is, being conceived, being born, growing, operating, walking, suffering, dying, in the interior of my humanity, my divinity, the eternal Word united to my soul, formed one single act of my whole life. Therefore, the succession of the external acts that could be seen in it was the outpouring of the single act, which, overflowing outside, formed the succession of my external life. But in my interior, as I was conceived, at the same time I was also born. I cried, I moaned, I walked, I operated, I spoke, I preached the gospel, I instituted the sacraments, I suffered and was crucified. Therefore, all that could be seen on the outside of my humanity, little by little, step by step, inside of it was one single act, long and continuous, and which still continues. So as I was conceived, coming from the single act of the Eternal One, I remained always as being conceived, always as being born, always moaning and crying. In sum, everything I did remained in act and as continuous act, because everything that comes from God and remains in God undergoes no mutations, nor increase nor diminution. Once the act is done, it remains with the fullness of life that never ends and can give life to all, as much as they want of it. So my will maintained and does maintain everything in act, my whole life, just as it maintains the life of the sun in act, without allowing it to decrease or increase in its light, in its heat, and in its effects, just as it preserves the expanse of the heavens with all the stars, without ever shrinking or dispersing even one star, and so with many other things created by me. In the same way, my supreme will maintains the life of all the acts of my humanity, without dispersing even one breath. Now, wherever it reigns, this will of mine does not know how to do separated acts. Its nature is one single act, multiple in its effects, but always one in its act. Therefore it calls the soul, who lets herself be dominated by it, to union with its single act, that she may find all the goods, all the effects that only the single act of a God can possess. Therefore may your attention be to remain united to that single act of the Eternal One, if you want to find the whole creation and the whole redemption in act. And in that single act you will find the length of my pains, of my steps, my continuous crucifixion. You will find everything. My will disperses nothing, and in it you will be identified with my acts and will take the fruit of my whole life. If it were not so, there would be a great difference between my operating and that of my saints. On the other hand, since my operating was one single act, between mine and theirs, there is the difference that passes between the sun and a tiny little flame, between the great sea and a drop of water, between the vastness of the heavens and a little hole. Only the power of my one act has the power to give itself to all and to embrace everything. And while it gives itself, it never loses anything. End of the reading.
The 25th of August, 1927, Volume 22, Relations between the Branches and the Vine, the Soul, Depository of the Divine Will. While I was praying, I found myself outside of myself, and with my sweet Jesus in my arms, clasping him tightly to my heart, I said to him, "Tell me, my love, what are the relations between you and me?" And Jesus, all goodness, told me, My daughter, do you want to know? The relations that pass between you and me are like the relations that pass between the branches and the vine. The vine forms the branches, and they receive the vital humour from the vine in order to vegetate from the vine, to clothe themselves with leaves and with grapes. So there is such union between the vine and the branches that the branches can neither be formed nor have life without the vine, and the vine would make no impression or display of itself, nor would it give any fruit without the branches. Therefore, there are such relations between the two of them, such bonds of union, that they form the same life and are inseparable from each other. And if they separate, the vine remains sterile, without display and without fruit, and the branches lose their life and wither. Now the vine is your Jesus, and you are the branch. The relations between you and me are inseparable. One is the blood that circulates in our vein, one the will, one the heartbeat. I form your life, and you form my glory and my fruit. And I delight in resting in the shade of the thick leaves of your branch, and in picking the grapes of my vine, and in enjoying them as I please. And but tell me more, my life, and your will, how is it in me? And Jesus added with unspeakable sweetness, my daughter, my will is in you as the depository of all its acts. In fact, when it does one act, my will does not deposit it outside of itself. The space, the decency, the sanctity would be lacking, as well as everything that is needed in order to preserve its acts. This is why it cannot place them anywhere else but within itself. One can ever have the space to receive all the heavens with their stars,
the sun with the expanse of its light, the sea with the vastness of its waters, the earth with the multiplicity of its plants. No one. Therefore, in order to be able to deposit its own acts, my divine will itself is needed. Now, since my will is in you, it makes the deposit of all its acts within you, because within its fiat it finds magnitude and sanctity worthy of itself. If you knew what the contentment of my eternal fiat is, in finding in the creature the space in which it can deposit its acts, which is their primary cause, because it is for the creature that they were done. Therefore all the acts of my divine will are in you, and from you they come out, bringing with them the glory that is due to them. Oh, how requited it feels in finding in all of its acts the creature giving glory to its light, to its sanctity, to its immensity. And in finding her kiss, glory, love, it feels so drawn as to form yet more beautiful acts, worthy of my eternal fiat, only for love of her in whom it can make the deposit of them, so as to receive her new kisses, her love, her glory. This is why wherever my will is, there is everything. There is heavens, sun, sea, and everything. Nothing can it lack of all its works. It contains everything. It preserves everything. It has room for everything, so as to enclose everything within itself. End of the reading. The 25th of August 1929, Volume 26. How Jesus created the seed of the divine fiat in forming the Our Father. I was thinking about the divine fiat and how its kingdom could ever be realized upon earth. It seemed impossible to me. First, because there is no one who occupies himself with making it known. And if anything is said or planned, it all resolves into words, while facts are, oh, how far away. And who knows which generation will have the good of knowing what regards the knowledges about the divine will and its kingdom. Second, it seems to me that the earth is unprepared. And I believe that in order to have such a great good for the kingdom of the divine will, its knowledges dominate the earth, who knows how many prodigies will precede it? But while I was thinking about this and other things, my sweet Jesus moved in my interior and told me, "My daughter, you must know that my coming upon earth and everything I did in redemption, my very death and resurrection, was nothing other than preparatory act for the kingdom of my divine will. And when I formed the Our Father, I formed the seed of the kingdom of my divine fiat in the midst of creatures. And if when I speak I create and I make the greatest, most beautiful and marvellous works come out of nothing, much more so when with the empire of my speaking prayer I have the virtue of creating what I want. Therefore the seed of the kingdom of my will was created by me in the act of my praying, as I formed and recited the Our Father. And if I taught it to the apostles, it was so that the church, by reciting it, might water and fecundate this seed, and they might dispose themselves to model their lives according to the dispositions of my divine fiat. My knowledges about it, my many manifestations, have developed this seed, and since they have been accompanied by the acts done by you in my divine will, so many little grains have formed as to form a great mass, from which each one can take his part, always if they want to, in order to live of the life of the divine will. Therefore everything is there, my daughter, the most necessary acts. There is the seed created by me, because if there is no seed, it is useless to hope for the plant. But if the seed is there, it takes work, the will of wanting the fruit of that seed. And one is sure of having the plant because by possessing the seed, one has in his power the life of the plant of that seed. There are those who water this seed in order to make it grow. Each Our Father that is recited serves to water it. There are my manifestations in order to make it known. All that is needed are those who would offer themselves to be the criers, and with courage, without fearing anything, facing sacrifices in order to make it known. So the substantial part is there, the greatest is there, the minor is needed, that is the superficial part, and your Jesus will know how to make his way in order to find he who will accomplish the mission of making known my divine will in the midst of the peoples. Therefore, on your part, do not place any obstacle. Do what you can, and I will do the rest. You do not know how I will overwhelm things and will dispose the circumstances, and this is why you reach the point of doubting that my fiat will be known and its kingdom will have its life upon earth. Then I abandoned all of myself in the divine volition in order to follow its acts. My sweet Jesus added, "My daughter, one who places himself in the unity of my will, places himself in the light. And just as the light has the virtue of descending down below and of laying itself like a mantle of light over each thing it invests, so it has the virtue of rising up high and of investing with its light what is up high. In the same way, one who places himself in the light of my fiat, in its unity of light, with his acts descends down below to all generations, and with his acts of light he invests everyone in order to do good to all, and he rises up high and invests the whole of heaven to glorify all. Therefore, in my divine will, the soul acquires the right to be able to offer the light of the eternal fiat to all, through the gift of her acts, multiplied into as many as are those who want to receive it." End of the reading. There are no more readings today. Have a very blessed day.